There's a place most people end up that is more dangerous than rock bottom, more dangerous than failure, more dangerous than losing everything and having to start over. And it is this being comfortable enough to stay, but unhappy enough to know something is wrong. That place, right there, that is where most people spend the majority of their adult lives. Not in crisis, not thriving, just comfortable enough that leaving feels reckless, but unhappy enough that staying is slowly costing them something they will never fully be able to name. Rock bottom gets all the attention. People talk about rock bottom like it is the most dangerous place a person can be. And I understand why. Rock bottom is painful. It is visible. It demands a response. When everything falls apart, you have no choice but to deal with it. The crisis forces the movement. The pain is loud enough that it cannot be ignored. And so people hit rock bottom and they change. Not always, not immediately, but the conditions for change are present because the current situation is clearly unsustainable. But comfortable and unhappy does not demand a response. It does not force movement. It does not create the kind of pain that screams for something to be different. It just sits there, quietly, day after day, year after year, familiar enough to stay in, uncomfortable enough to know you should not. And the longer you stay in it, the harder it becomes to leave. Because every day you spend in comfortable and unhappy is another day your brain adds to the evidence that this is just how things are, that this is just what life feels like, that the version of things you actually want is probably not realistic anyway. And the slow erosion of belief that something better is possible is the most expensive thing that comfortable and unhappy ever costs you. Think about where this shows up in your life right now. The job that is not terrible enough to quit, but not good enough to feel like anything. The relationship that is not broken enough to end, but not real enough to feel like what you actually want. The city you live in that you never chose on purpose. The version of your days that you did not design, but just sort of fell into and then kept falling into because changing it required more energy than staying in it. The life that is fine. Just fine. And fine is the most dangerous word in the English language when it is describing your entire existence, because fine does not push you anywhere. Fine does not demand better. Fine just continues. Here is what comfortable and unhappy actually does to a person over time. And I want to be specific about this because I think most people feel it without being able to name it. The first thing it does is lower your baseline for what you expect from your own life. When you spend long enough in a situation that is less than what you actually want, your brain starts to recalibrate. It starts to treat the current level as normal. And when something becomes normal, the contrast between it and what you actually want starts to fade. You stop feeling the gap as sharply. You stop being disturbed by it. And when you stop being disturbed by the gap, you lose the energy that would have driven you to close it. Comfortable and unhappy does not just trap you where you are. It makes you forget why you ever wanted something different. The second thing it does is create a specific kind of resentment that has no clear target. When things are clearly bad, you know what you are angry at. You know what needs to change. But when things are just not quite right, when the discomfort is diffuse and hard to point at, the resentment does not have anywhere specific to land. So it lands everywhere. It shows up as irritability with people who do not deserve it, as a low-level dissatisfaction with things that should not bother you, as a sense that something is missing that you cannot quite identify. And over time, that diffused resentment becomes part of your personality, part of how you move through the world. And you stop recognizing it as the symptom of a specific solvable problem and start accepting it as just who you are. The third thing comfortable and unhappy does is steal your imagination. When you are in genuine pain, your imagination activates. You start thinking about what different could look like. What would have to change? What is actually possible? Pain creates urgency, and urgency creates creativity. But comfortable and unhappy numbs the imagination because there is not enough pain to activate it. Things are not good enough to feel grateful for, but not bad enough to feel urgent about. And in that middle space, the imagination goes quiet. And a quiet imagination is one of the saddest things that can happen to a person because it is the imagination that sees the version of your life that could exist. And without it, you stop being able to picture anything different from what you already have. So why do people stay uncomfortable and unhappy for so long? Because I think if you're honest with yourself and you recognize this pattern in your own life, the question you probably have is not why is this bad? You already know it is bad. The question is why is it so hard to leave even when you know? The first reason is loss aversion. Human beings are wired to feel the pain of losing something more acutely than the pleasure of gaining something, which means the things you would lose by leaving comfortable and unhappy, the stability, the familiarity, the things you have built even inside a situation that is not right, feel heavier than the things you would gain by leaving. Even if what you would gain is objectively better, even if you know the trade is worth it, the brain weights the loss more heavily than the gain. And so staying feels safer than leaving, even when staying is the thing that is actually costing you the most. The second reason is identity. When you have been in a situation long enough, it becomes part of who you are. The job becomes your career. The relationship becomes your partnership. The city becomes your home. And leaving it requires not just a logistical change, but an identity change. You have to be willing to become someone whose life looks different from the one you have been presenting to the world. And that is uncomfortable in a way that goes deeper than just the practical challenges of making change. It requires you to redefine yourself. And most people were never given permission to do that. We're never shown that identity is not fixed, that who you are is not determined by how long you have been somewhere or what you have been doing, that you are allowed to become someone new at any point regardless of how much history you have with the current version of your life. The third reason is fear of regret. What if I leave and the thing I leave for does not work out? What if I give up the stability and the new thing fails? What if I trade what I have for something worse? And that fear, the fear of being responsible for making things worse, keeps people in situations that are making them miserable because at least the current misery is familiar and not their fault. At least they did not choose it in the same active way that leaving would require them to choose something new. Staying uncomfortable and unhappy feels passive, but it is one of the most active choices a person makes. Every day you stay is a choice. Every day you do not move towards something better is a decision made by default. And default decisions are still decisions. They just have the advantage of not feeling like anyone's fault. So what do you actually do if you recognize yourself in this? Because I do not want to just describe the trap without talking about how to get out of it. The first thing is naming it clearly. Comfortable and unhappy is not a feeling. It is a situation, and situations can be changed. But you cannot change what you have not named. So the starting point is getting honest with yourself about which areas of your life fall into this category. Not to immediately blow everything up, just to see it clearly, to stop calling it fine when it is not fine, to stop pretending the discomfort is not there because acknowledging it feels like ingratitude. The discomfort is information, and ignoring information does not make it go away. It just means you're making decisions without it. The second thing is reconnecting with your imagination. Asking yourself what you would actually want if the current situation did not exist. Not what is realistic given your circumstances. What you would actually want. Because the gap between what you would want and what you currently have is the map. It shows you the direction. And once you can see the direction, you can start taking steps toward it even before you have left the current situation entirely. You do not have to blow everything up to start moving. You just have to start moving. Small steps in the right direction taken consistently will eventually get you out of comfortable and unhappy even if the exit is not immediate. God did not design your life to be fine. He did not put vision and desire and imagination inside you so that you could spend your days in a situation that is just tolerable enough to stay in. The discomfort you feel in comfortable and unhappy is not a character flaw. It is a signal. It is the part of you that knows there is more available than what you are currently settling for. And that signal deserves to be listened to, not immediately acted on in a way that creates chaos, but listened to, honored, used as the beginning of a direction rather than ignored until it goes quiet. The most dangerous place you can be is comfortable and unhappy at the same time, not because it is the most painful, but because it is the most permanent. Pain demands change. Comfortable and unhappy just waits. and it will wait as long as you let it. The question is how much of your life you're willing to give it before you decide that what is on the other side of it is worth the discomfort of leaving. Sit with that.